Welcome to Podman Pipecast.
The premier pipe band podcast.
Welcome
back. So longtime listeners of the channel will remember back in episode 14, I looked this up because
a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. We did an episode about contest rules, specifically for Rspb, the Western United States Pipe Band Association, because that's where we're located in, and that's usually where we compete. And it was really interesting to see some things that were rules that we didn't know about, or some things we thought we knew that weren't rules, and some things that I can't believe they had to make a rule for, like not getting in a physical fight with a judge, which is interestingly enough against the rules. I'm sure there's a story there somewhere. So we decided we'd look at some other associations and their rules, and what better one to start with than the Rspb-Yay. Yay! Rspb-Yay!
Yeah.
They don't have an easy way to say that, like Rspb.
Rspb.
Rspb? I don't know. Do people say that? I don't think so. Okay, so first of all, welcome. Yeah, because you, them.
Yeah. You.
I'm sure people seeing Rspb-Yay in the description and such are like, oh, we should listen to this. And maybe you've never listened to our podcast before because maybe you're in the UK. And so welcome to you. We're glad that you could join us. We're not going to be like dishing the dirt on your association or anything.
Just reading some rules.
Just reading some rules and kind of comparing how they are either the same or different from what we're familiar with in Rspb. And I gotta say, so we took this from the Rspb-Yay website, and there's so much on there. There's so much in the administration. Is that what it is? Admin information procedures forms page that is just there's just so much. There's so much. And I think overall, the one thing that I was noticing between Rspb and Rspb-Yay was that there's so much with Rspb-Yay.
There's a lot of rules.
And it makes sense because the Rspb-Yay obviously runs all the major championships that we're all familiar with, and the World Championships, which is the biggest of them, and they have so many rules. So many rules. For people who aren't familiar with the Rspb-Yay, and you're maybe just familiar with your home association, the Rspb-Yay is like a big monster organization, and I mean that in the best way because they have to be. Like, they have so many people and so many rules and procedures, and there's actually people, like there's an actual building where people do Rspb-Yay stuff at, and it's a huge, huge monster of a thing. In contrast to Rspb, which we've talked to a lot of Rspb members on our channel, which is like pretty much just a volunteer organization where you just really like pipe band and you want to help out in your area. And so there's people that, you know, obviously organize contests and serve on the music board and serve on, you know, our adjudicators, and they're all just kind of like people who have day jobs but also do pipe band. But the Rspb-Yay is huge in comparison to that. It's like not even a comparison. And you can tell that based on the number of things that are on this page. And we're going to read some of these interesting rules and such and see what you think. See what we think.
Yeah.
All right, let's go for it.
So I only read all 19 pages of the Standing Orders and Rules doc.
Only
that one. Only 19 pages.
What was the first thing in that doc that stood out to you? Or one of them?
There was one rule that I feel like was, I think it was something like in Rspb. I don't entirely remember, but if you have a complaint, you have to pay a deposit for that complaint.
Yes, I noticed that too.
Yeah. And if they think it's warranted, you can have your deposit back.
But otherwise, they're just like, no, we're keeping your money.
Yeah.
I think I remember that coming up in Rspb too.
Yeah.
It's like, don't waste our time. Which makes sense because I'm sure if everyone who had a complaint like didn't have to pay a deposit, they just kind of complain and then like nothing would get done. um, so this is just a general thing that I noticed, and I didn't check this on WSPBA's website, but on the contest rules or anything. But I noticed in the standing orders and procedures for RSPBA, they kind of, I know they have in there where different things were adopted or changed over the years,
Yeah.
which I kind of liked because then you know who to blame. It's like, I don't like this rule. Well, you should have been here in 2017 when we voted on it. But regardless of that, it was interesting to see bandsman/bandswoman as a term in some places, and in other places it was just quote band member. And so I meant to go back and check where each of those instances was and see if they adopted like a change in the language, because to me, I saw the first time I saw bandsman/bandswoman, I was like, what are they talking about? And then I'm like, oh, band member. And so I like, just from a consistency standpoint, not a critique or anything, I was like, are we like, talking about, gender inclusivity like we do a lot of times nowadays, um, in government and various legal documents and such, like people have started to refer to, like police officer instead of policeman or policewoman. And it's just like kind of made me look at it funny. It was like, oh, why don't you just say band member? That's fewer letters that you had to type out. But I'm sure at some point they decided to do one instead of the other, and then they just didn't fix the rest of them.
Well, speaking of that, did you see in the rules doc there was a whole section like at the beginning? It's talking about each of the groups, like the music board, the who's in what for each group, and there was a woman's section.
Yes,
that was deleted.
There was a ladies committee, and I thought it was so funny because I get that this is like the updated document and they don't want to keep in all the stuff they deleted up to that point, but it was like all it said is just ladies committee, and it was like removed in 2021. And I was like,
but
that
what
makes
was it?
I know, that makes me think like, what was it? So I tried to do some research on what it was, and the only thing I found was like a single line from Pipestrum's online magazine that was just like, RSPBA eliminated its ladies committee because it had been defunct for several years. So I was like, okay, so it hasn't really been in use for several years, but that made me think like, what was it supposed to be? Was it, I don't know, just a bunch of ladies doing ladies thing? I don't know.
As ladies do.
As ladies do.
As band women's do.
Yeah. And then it made me think of like, old school like church groups where they'd have like knitting circles where they'd get all the ladies would get together and like knit while the men are off doing like whatever
where
they're
they
doing.
make the potlucks for the men in the band.
Yes. So I was like, apparently like they had a ladies knitting circle for RSPBA. I don't know.
Where do you think you get a kilt from?
I mean, clearly. I don't know where these bands are getting their kilts now that there's no ladies committee. I don't know. It's just that I noticed that too. That was very interesting. The next thing I noticed was in the, I gotta go to this page. Oh, it's so small on my phone. So the section where it talks about registration, which is 3.6. Okay, so this was something that I actually knew about, and it was because when we went to Scotland in 2019, like generally if you're competing in another organization, you should have at least one person as part of your band or in your just somewhere involved in your band that has read all the rules, because otherwise things like this will come up that you may not have in your home association, but they expect from you when you're there. So 3.6.1 of registration says, the pipe major or his/her assistant at all contests or competitions on request of the company representative, which is RSPBA. So on request of the RSPBA representative, make available the computer printout and assist in confirming the details tally with those who have competed. And this is specifically referencing like a computer printout showing all registered band members of that band for the time being. You have to have that on you, either the pipe major or the pipe major's assistant, whatever that is. whoever that person is, you have to have a printout of basically your roster showing all your registered members. And then it goes through a procedure. They actually have a flow chart for this because, like I said, there's so many documents on the Rspb-Yay. They have a flow chart for how the roster check is to be done. So after you get done competing, you march your band over to an area. I don't know if they do this at every contest, but at the championships that we went to, they did it where you march your band over to an area, you stand there, and someone comes up and they ask for your roster printout, and then they randomly select 3 to 5 individuals who then they ask, like, who are you? What's your name? And then they check that you're on the roster. And that's how they do the roster check. And it's like, if they pick you and you're not on the band roster, your band could be disqualified, basically. So that was one I thought was interesting because I haven't seen that in Wspb or in other.
Yeah, I had that written down too.
Yeah.
You also, speaking of registration, a drummer cannot be registered as a pipe major or assistant of the pipe major of a band.
I saw that. And I was kind of like, what? Yeah, so there's a whole section on dual registration, which is right after that. It's like 3.11 to like 3.15. And yeah, I don't know, because I could see that being a thing, right? Like, if you're a pipe major, but you also want to play like snare drum in like a lower level band, you can't do that.
It's not allowed.
I mean,
of 2017.
I guess I'm kind of sad about that. I don't know how many people that would apply to, but that's okay. Sadly. Sorry, no. Chris, you can't be a drummer.
Poor Chris.
The other thing, which, speaking about differences between pipe major and drummers, was there's a form on the Rspb-Yay website that you have to fill out if you're trying to change your pipe major or if you're trying to change your secretary. And I guess I saw that and I was like, at first I was like, well, why don't, like, not for literally anyone else in the band? There's like transfers and things to move people from one band to another that you have to, there's rules for that. But then I was like, they specifically have these 2 forms for pipe major and secretary. And I'm like, what about drum sergeant? Nah. That seems to me to be important, but
nah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess they figure the pipe major is probably your like de facto band leader, like president of your organization. So maybe they're like, that's a bigger deal. I don't know.
Nobody cares about the drum section.
Honestly. I mean, I've never heard of a band where the drum sergeant is like the leader, you know, in terms of like the major officer who signs for things. But I mean, it could happen. Yeah. Not, I guess, in the Rspb-Yay, but it could happen. What else?
There was a rule, when out in the open, adjudicators shall not approach nearer than 3 meters to any member of a competing band.
3 meters, okay. That's actually, I feel like that's like too much space.
See, I don't know if that is specifically when it comes to listening to the band or just like out there. Just like,
don't.
It says when in the open, they shall not. So like,
you're like, okay, so you're just standing like in the middle of the field, just not even playing. You're just standing there at a contest, and a judge comes up to you like, whoa, please. Social distancing, yeah. I guess. I guess. Yeah, these rules are also, there's some parts where they're written kind of confusing because they refer to things that are above them. So I like read one and I was like, wait, what are you talking about?
Yeah, a couple times too.
Yeah, and I had to go back and read previous things. It's like not very friendly to skim. So if you do end up reading these, like, read, don't like skip through stuff. If you're gonna read all 19 pages, read all 19 pages. There's no excuse for being lazy. Even though I started doing that. And I just want to let you know it doesn't work. There's a rule that 4.14, where is that?
Oh, I've got
Non-attendance at contests. If you are a band, a drum major, or an individual that entered a contest and you don't advise the contest secretary of non-attendance 1 hour prior to the start of major championships or by the draw or report time of all other contests, you can be fined.
Mm-hmm.
And it says a sum as determined by the board of directors and or suspended until the fine has been paid in full, but like it doesn't say what the fine is. They could just be like, look, we don't like you. 500 pounds.
Don't like you. You were late.
Yeah, and which I'm thinking, like, wait, a no-show fine? And then I look at it and I'm like, I guess, I mean, if you don't show up, like, an hour before, you got issues. You got bigger issues than like, not showing up. Like, where are you? Your entire band is missing. That's a problem. But I guess if you wanted to scratch or something and for some reason not compete that day, you have to still go and tell them or like call them or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you could call, I think it said. As long as it's an hour before the draw.
Yeah, so figure that out. Honestly though, that could be an issue thinking about it. Like, I'm not trying to be negative, but like, what if your whole band got COVID? Or like your whole pipe section or your whole drum section or something, and you're just like, well, I guess we can't go like the day of. I mean,
are you getting your COVID results an hour before the competition?
You better
not. Them early. Exactly.
Because then that means you would have played all day at,
oh yeah,
you know, on the field with COVID, and like, I mean, that's kind of an issue. By the way, I did not see anything in this section of the website about COVID-19 or
yeah, and this version of the rules was updated as of March 2021.
Yeah, so
I was surprised that none of that really applied anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of expecting to see something like guidelines. So the other thing is, there are a ton of guidelines for everything on the Rspb-Yay website. It's like one thing that I really appreciated, actually. Let me pull it up because it's pretty, like, I appreciated this a lot. It's called Director Duties in the Ring, and it's a document on the Rspb-Yay website that talks about, in this same area, this admin information procedures forms area, where if you are directing a pipe band contest, it talks about like what you need to do step by step. And it's very detailed. It's like, here's where you put the piping tent. Here's where you put the drumming tent. Here's how wide the circle needs to be. Here's how you mark it off. Here's when you have the band at the line, this is what you need to do. You need a stopwatch. You need this, you need that. And like, it is very detailed. And so with that level of detail in some of the documentation, I was kind of surprised that there was nothing about like recommendations for like, I don't know what I want. Just like if and they have rules for indoor contests, but I did not see anything about, you know, mask wearing indoors, or
if we don't acknowledge it, it's not real.
Yeah. And I guess they're just leaving that up to the event organizers themselves. But after seeing that level of detail about like, this is how you run a pipe band contest, I was like, wait, you don't have like anything that just says, even a little paragraph in there that's just like, look, it's advised that you take COVID-19 preventative precautions. That's it.
Something.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm looking for. I just was surprised to not see anything. After on that, when that's such a big deal, and other things that don't seem to be as big of a deal have like more emphasis on them. I don't know.
Like indoor contests.
Yeah.
What was that section? Why? Who's having an indoor contest?
Let's go to rule number 4.13. About indoor contest rules, 4.11. So the board of directors can approve or can provide a set of indoor competition rules, which shall apply to all major indoor competitions. And those are open only to Rspb-Yay bands, which, okay, that's fine. That's rule 4.12. But then 4.13, this is a thing, one of those times when you really have to kind of understand how they're building the document, because if you take this one out of context, it's like ridiculous. So I'm assuming they mean to preface this with at any indoor contest. No, so I'm thinking, because this is within that section. Otherwise, just 4.13 just says no member of the company, that's Rspb-Yay, no member of Rspb-Yay, band member, or the approved adjudicators panel may take part in any contest not authorized by the Rspb-Yay, except with the written permission of the board of directors. So if you take that out of the indoor contest, like if you take that out of the indoor contest like section and you just read rule 4.13 on page whatever this page is. But if you just read 4.13, what it's saying is no band member or judge who is a member of the Rspb-Yay or an adjudicator approved by the Rspb-Yay, you guys can't compete at anything unless it's an Rspb-Yay contest.
See, but even leaving that in the context of indoor contests,
yeah,
what does it mean?
I'm trying to, and I referenced back to the WSPBA rules, and I was like, I don't see anything in there like
is
about.
It like if I went to a fair and they had a bagpipe contest that was inside, I couldn't compete in that?
And that's what I'm wondering. Like let's say someone had like a kitchen piping contest at their house, and there were like 10 pipers there who happened to be band members of Rspb-Yay membership bands, and then there was a person there who happened to be an adjudicator registered with the Rspb-Yay. They're not allowed to have their contest. Like, that's what I'm hearing when I read that.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, like, there's no way, right?
Or is there?
Maybe. I don't know. I really wish we had a rules lawyer right now, because I'm just reading this, and I mean, it looks like a legal document, but it sure doesn't read like one.
Or does it?
Or does it? I don't know who's reading it. I'm reading it right now, and I'm just like, oh no. I don't know. That's a weird one. That's a weird one for sure. It doesn't say when it was adopted. So
it's one of the first.
It must be. It's just an original, an OG rule right here. So you can't. If you're thinking of having an informal contest,
no,
don't do it.
No,
you can't.
It's not allowed.
I don't even know.
Another rule that stood out to me was 4.78, which any band member or drum major taking food or drink onto the arena at the finale shall be liable of suspension for a period of time as determined by the board of directors. So, like, if you try to take food to their ending mass bands, you're gonna get suspended.
Yes. So, apologies, I guess, for last episode, which, if you didn't listen to it, was hot takes, and it was wonderful in my opinion.
Yes.
But we talked about how mass bands should be a bigger deal, because in WSPBA it's like, long story short, you have to listen to the rest of that episode to understand, but it's different in WSPBA, whereas I think in the Rspb-Yay it's more about the prize giving ceremony. In WSPBA you are not, and when you're in the mass band and you're a band, you are not the focus. you are there because you're the entertainment, but you're not. It's not your deal. But in the Rspb-Yay, it's more like, the grand finale and the prize awards. It's about getting your prizes, and I guess they still have rules about you can't, leave the arena without good reason is another rule that's on here.
Yeah.
And only one member shall break from ranks to receive a prize,
and they have to be in full dress.
Yes. So I mean, that's good, right?
Yeah.
There's also quote rules. They're not really rules because they're not in this document. But if you're given the command like stand easy, as differing from stand at ease, but stand easy meaning like some people take that to mean you can walk around. Like technically, that's not what that means if you actually like look up what it's supposed to mean. But if you're given that command in mass bands, kind of the general understanding is like you don't have to stand in one place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably still a thing. I think when we were there in 2019,
nobody was really
like leaving,
yeah.
and no one was like moving. So just long story short, don't bring your nachos to mass bands. You shouldn't anyway, but
what are you doing with those? Get out of here.
Yeah.
It's been 25 minutes.
So, we're going to come back at you next week with even more rules.
More rules.
And just interesting things that the Rspb-Yay has on their interesting website. Because it is very interesting. I find this all to be interesting. I don't know.
Interesting.
Is this interesting? I think it's interesting. And if you didn't think it was interesting, you wouldn't be listening. So, gotcha.
Owned.
You've been caught. Okay, we're going to come back at you next week in your earbuds.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this show, then support us on Patreon for exclusive content as well as the video of us recording this. We'll have special exercises we'll be writing as well as tips and tricks with tenor drumming and other instruments to come. Subscribe to us on YouTube for some tenor tutorials and possibly other tutorials later on. And like us on Facebook at Podman Pipecast.